So I'm just trying to show what's happening. I'm still forming my thoughts. It doesn't look good for Trump, but that's not where I'm really going for this. I'm showing you can't be a part of this thing without the tentacles of swamp creatures all around you. And then that's where it's going to go to. This does shine a better light on Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis might have swamp creatures around him, but if Trump is going to have swamp creatures around him, you can put the two on the same pedestal. Doesn't mean I'll vote for any of them. I've already said I'm not voting for Trump. I'm out on him for various reasons. You can go back to previous videos to find that out. Let's take a trip back to the past general election for a second to introduce Susie Wiles.
Going into Tuesday's election, some polls in Florida had Donald Trump trailing Joe Biden by 2 to 3 points. Outlook was not completely rosy for the president, who had won Florida in 2016 by a narrow margin, little more than 1%. 113,000 votes.
Well, the president won Florida Tuesday night and by more than 3%, tripling his spread from 2016. That is a landslide by Florida standards. The woman largely credited with making that happen is Susie Wiles, veteran GOP strategist who ran successful campaigns for Florida's last two governors and headed Team Trump's Florida operations. Right there live with us from Ponte Vedra Beach. Good morning, Susie.
Susie, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
We are so glad to have you. So go through it, if you would. How did you structure this winning campaign? I mean, you are really a political pro. You micro-targeted, you looked at certain segments of the population, appealed to them, advertised to them, and you reached them. I mean, they voted for President Trump in numbers unseen. Just one example, it appears that 11 or 12% of black voters in Florida voted for President Trump. Who would have thought that? Probably you.
Actually, 13%, which doubles the percentage he received in 2016. We knew going into this election that it really was time to change the Republican coalition. The traditional Republican voter coalition just simply can't, I don't believe, elect Republicans any longer. So beginning to bring into the tent a larger number of Hispanic voters, certainly making it palatable for African Americans to think. We targeted, we've talked to, we looked at vastly different voter groups than we had before.
So I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to play her as an intro to tell you who I'm going to talk about here through an article by Pedro Gonzalez. Excellent work by Pedro Gonzalez. What I'm going to take this to is, why is Donald Trump supporting Mitt Romney's niece for RNC head? We know, and Marjorie Taylor Greene's on board with. Actually, I don't know if Marjorie Taylor Greene's on board with Ronna, but we know Marjorie Taylor Greene's on board with basically everything Trump is, and McCarthy. We know that there's something behind those endorsements that's money, other interests that they are not explaining to us. And that will tie into my takeaway. But first, the story from Pedro Gonzalez. Really, this is a story about Susie Wiles, the person you just heard. These are people who are establishment, longtime people I've never heard of before. Now I'm just looking into that they are people who can adapt. They read the tea leaves, like Kevin McCarthy. I'm reading the tea leaves. I want power, so I will morph into whatever. I really don't have ideology. I'll morph into whatever you want me to be at the moment. One moment, I think Trump should resign. The other moment, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene should head a committee. There's no ideology here other than maintaining power. These are people you can't trust. I'm not going to speak too much on Susie. I'm just learning about her. But here is why I think Pedro's onto something here on why Donald Trump would support Ronna McDaniel. Let's take a look at the article, and then we'll get to the takeaway. This article, of course, it has to be on Substack. These type of great pieces don't have a home anywhere else. The Mar-a-Lago connection between Ronna McDaniel. Why? Why is he supporting Ronna McDaniel? Because a top advisor, Susie Wiles, to Donald Trump is leading the effort to save Ronna McDaniel's job as the chair of the Republican National Committee, even as his supporters revolt against her leadership. In one of the best episodes of Timcast IRL, they had Harmeet Dillon on, and Luke Rudkowski, he should be there whenever Tim has a political. Tim's great. This is not a diss on Tim, but Luke is able to ask those tough questions while Tim kind of, schedules things and does the bigger picture of making sure everything, the planes land where they're supposed to land. And that clip was amazing for Harmeet Dillon. So you see the energy is for Harmeet. The energy is not for Ronna. And Charlie Kirk is a Trump supporter. He said, I told Trump I would endorse him. So what's happening here? Right Coast Strategies, a consulting firm led by Susie Wiles, you just heard there, that used to work with DeSantis, we'll get to that in a second, and is now with Trump, has been paid $285K by the Republican National Committee since last summer. So she got her loot through Ronna McDaniel. That is proof by the FEC filings there. Wiles is currently leading an effort by Trump to retain Ronna McDaniel as RNC chair, even as his base revolts against her leadership. Why is the base revolting against her? Because she's an absolute failure. That's why. Not even a personal thing. Didn't even care. I don't care if you're Mitt Romney's niece, if you're doing what we need you to do. Obviously, that's not happening. She's a fixture to this establishment, waste of money, all that kind of thing. I think she would say the midterms were a success, just like Mitch McConnell. We got a little bit of a shift in the House. You didn't have people like Blake Masters getting in. That's a win for these types. So Trump and Wiles have their own reasons for keeping McDaniel. These records show that the Right Coast Strategies, remember, that's the one that Susan Wiles founded or was a part of. Let me go back here. Led by, so she's leading it. It was founded in 2011 and began receiving payments from the RNC last June, just after Wiles started managing Trump's fundraising operations and vetting people seeking his endorsement. So Wiles jump on with this Right Coast Strategies group to lead this group. The RNC, they know, hey, we better get some type of connection to Don Dada because we know we're going to try and tank this midterm. This is my opinion. So we got a connection with Don Dada. So Don Dada will support us if we got someone in his ear who we're giving paper to. That's where this is heading. Wiles is a longtime political operative and veteran of Trump's 2016 and 2019 presidential campaigns in Florida. So where this is heading is Trump owes a lot to her, as she's a political mastermind from what I'm seeing here. I can't vouch for her independently, but you heard how she was introduced in that local news broadcast. In 2021, she became the CEO of Trump's Save America Leadership PAC and took charge of vetting candidates seeking endorsements from Trump. That's a problem because Trump has not done a good job. The most important people to endorse weren't done properly. So Trump didn't even initially endorse Robbie Starbuck. He later on said, yeah, I'm going to halfway endorse him. He didn't endorse, obviously, I am a huge supporter of Kathy Barnett, didn't endorse her. Who's in charge of that kind of stuff? Looks like I'm finding out today, Susie Wiles. So she's got her own interests in here. So you wonder, why does Trump make some of these bad endorsements, these establishment endorsements? Probably because of a Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles knows, I want these players here. I know that the base doesn't like some of these people, but here's how I can move these chess pieces to make it happen and protect Trump and protect my power. There's nothing more. It's Game of Thrones. Right Coast Strategy, so Wiles is a co-founder and principal, began receiving payments from Save America in May 2021. So this group, Right Coast Strategies, Susie Wiles is a co-founder, leader, and principal, started getting payments from Trump's Save America PAC. Then they also began getting payments from Ronna McDaniel and the RNC. Nobody would think twice about it because it's Trump and that's part of what the RNC is supposed to do. Despite her newfound role in Trump's world, Wiles has deep ties to the GOP establishment. Before overseeing his political machine, she worked for Ballard Partners. And let me stop for a second. I apologize. I'm not always, if you're just listening, telling you where I'm jumping to my opinion and the article. I'll try to do a better job of that, but I am sharing it on video if you want to kind of read along and see where I'm jumping in. Back to the article. A powerful lobbying firm that expanded its Washington footprint through its connection to Trump, a former client. Founder and President Brian Ballard served as national finance chair for Mitt Romney's 2012 bid and John McCain's 2008 race. So I'm just trying to show what's happening. I'm still forming my thoughts. It doesn't look good for Trump, but that's not where I'm really going for this. I'm showing you can't be a part of this thing without the tentacles of swamp creatures all around you. And then that's where it's going to go to. This does shine a better light on Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis might have swamp creatures around him, but if Trump is going to have swamp creatures around him, you can put the two on the same pedestal. Doesn't mean I'll vote for any of them. I've already said I'm not voting for Trump. I'm out on him for various reasons. You can go back to previous videos to find that out. That's why you might want to stop joking. Wait for it. I'm not saying this is where I'm at, but does it make Yay 24 more attractive to you? I will say this, Nick Fury, whenever he's eligible, he's only like 24 years old or whatever, 25, looks more attractive to me. Well, it looks way more attractive than this nonsense. What he's done is none of the swamp creatures connect with that dude. And that's a strength right now. But back to the article. So you see all these tentacles, former Romney and all that type of people in there. Last year, Ballard signed a lobbying agreement with Freedom for All Americans, a Washington-based nonprofit. You need one of those FBI boards to keep up with this stuff. It's just a couple groups. We're not even getting into like George S. and all those type of people. This is just the Trump stuff. Many Republicans have vehemently opposed. So what that's about is he signed a lobbying agreement with Freedom for All, and this is a Washington-based nonprofit that was pushing for the passage of the Equality Act, legislation that I don't and many people on the channel do not support. So let me get to my takeaway. This great article, maybe I'll do a different deep dive into the article. Great piece by Pedro. And now, where am I? Where I'm at is Susan Wiles, you might have heard in that intro, is connected to Ron DeSantis. So Susie is what she goes by. So now I'm thinking, and Ron DeSantis dropped her. So I started looking into her. And Wiles once served as a top advisor to DeSantis. I'm going to get to my takeaway right here and wrap up. Wiles once served as a top advisor to DeSantis, but she was abruptly ousted by his inner circle in 2019 amid rising tensions between the duo. I don't know what those tensions are. Somebody let me know if you're familiar with all this kind of stuff that's inside baseball. Not a lot of people are, but if you follow it, let me know. I'm curious about that. Remember, I did that video where I was giving Ron DeSantis credit, where the clip was, his big money donors, he doesn't give a F.
Those who work closely with him say that he is unique among elected officials in his disregard for public opinion and the press. Ron's strength as a politician is that he doesn't give a fuck, a Republican consultant who knows him told me. Ron's weakness as a politician is that he doesn't give a fuck. Big donors, he doesn't give a shit. Cancels on them all the time.
Woo! So I've been very critical of Ron DeSantis. I'm not backtracking off of that, but I'm going to be fair in covering it. And I have said I'm pausing on the DeSantis criticism until he announces now, or he says more stuff. He needs to either zip it about the national stuff, about Trump or whatever, or just be quiet and I'll stay quiet until he announces, then I'll adjust. But what happened here? DeSantis dropped her. So if you're Trump, what Trump is probably thinking is she's an asset. Trump is probably thinking, I like Susie Wiles because she's a political mastermind savvy and appears to have beef with DeSantis, and she knows DeSantis well, so she knows maybe where all the bodies are politically buried, and that's someone I want on my team. That's where I think Trump is going with this. So then my takeaway is, I did a video on George Santos. I'm going to take it off of George Santos and then come back to Trump. My problem with George Santos isn't that he didn't graduate from college. Who cares about that? My problem for George Santos isn't that he's not Jewish or whatever, all these, that he owes money or even had a problem with fraudulent checks in Brazil, allegedly. My problem is, same with Herschel Walker, why don't you come to us and say, I had these problems and I'm running right now to be an America First candidate. This is what real people look like. Real people have problems. Real people make mistakes. I'm not Mitt Romney. Here's where I'm at politically. Here's all my foibles. Elect me if you agree with these things. George Santos, he just is not a trustworthy looking dude, but I would respect that more. So maybe I consider supporting him, whatever that looks like. Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she would have said, McCarthy is a swamp creature, but here's what I want to do. He's gonna, if we can control him and get him to do what we need him to do, then I can stomach him and we don't have to go through all this BS of swapping out swamp creature for maybe another swamp creature, because you're not going to get a MAGA candidate for speaker. If Marjorie Taylor Greene had said that, then maybe I could rock with her. But no, she's saying McCarthy has changed. He's conservative. And I'm like, stop. So the same with Trump. If Trump would come out and say, I'm for Ronna McDaniel because we've got these ties. Ronna McDaniel is funding the person who I think I need politically to go up against some of these other people. I understand these are creatures, but she helped me win Florida. My point is, if Trump would come out and say the truth, I don't know if that's the truth, but if that's the truth, instead of just saying, I back, and there's no substance to it, I just back Ronna McDaniel. And the base is like, why? Bruh, if you're a populist, come out and tell people. There's no downside to that. Maybe these swamp creatures won't like, they'll think Trump's throwing them under the bus, but who cares? If you're a populist, you're about the people first. I think the problem here is Trump, MTG, anybody's Charlie Kirk supporting Soros. He was pretty clear on why, so not Charlie Kirk, but in general, just be not Charlie Kirk supporting Santos himself being honest. Just be honest. If you want to separate yourself from these corporate politicians, just be honest. The same thing with the Trump and the NFTs. I had to do the live and clown him for this BS. I understand you've got to fund your campaign. So if Don Dada would have came out and said, financially, we might be going into a recession, depression, who knows? I don't want to scare people, but they're locking down on people's bank accounts and ostracizing anybody who doesn't even say a bad thing about me, even if they're neutral about me. I got to raise money. So I'm going to do these NFTs. Here's how it's going to come out. It's no disrespect. That would have landed differently. Instead of just, oh, here's my NFTs. And just be honest. That's all I got to say. Let me know what you think. Take care.